Hey there, it's Monday. It is 6:30. We're going a little later, but what else you got to do? No one's watching the DNC, at least not the first night. It's Burns and Holla. My name is Zach Burns. Terry Hallman is here, the Holla. Hey, Terry.
Hey.
And then from 710 Sports, he was a frequent guest on the show that I used to host at Cairo. Danny O'Neill, also from mynorthwest.com. Hey, Danny, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I feel honored to get the invite.
I feel honored for the acceptance. Danny,
that's unfortunate for you. Got some low standards.
We have insanely low standards, as you will come to learn over the course of the next hour. At some point, my kitten is going to knock over my microphone, just like it happens on Don Lemon's show. Like, this is all totally pro. You look different, Danny. We were chatting a little bit before the show started. And I don't remember you ever having any sort of facial hair.
Not really.
Yeah. And now you're, I don't know if this is like just embracing the COVID messy chic that a lot of us are, or were you just like, you know what, I'm going to try something different.
It's kind of pathetic because I basically had it for about a year and I trim it, which is strange. Like, cause I feel like the hipster thing is to, if you're going to grow a beard, to really grow it. And you just don't even care. Like, the question is, like, maybe you'll trim it here to keep it from covering up your eyes. But even that is kind of like, it's full mountain man. And so I kind of feel like I've got a little bit of Miami Vice flair to it because I have been trimming it. But yeah, it's weird. Like, you don't have to take care of yourself. I haven't gotten a haircut in 6 months. So I can't tell the difference as much unless you got some sort of ponytail wrapped up in the back,
really? The back there. No. Yeah, it's a little long. Okay.
Lord have mercy. Okay.
Now we're starting to see a little bit. There it is.
There we go.
You look like the original Nutty Professor.
Yeah. I'm trying to go for a mullet, man. Gonna get a little party in the back, business up front.
There you go.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Kentucky waterfall, the ape drape.
Starting off again with a bang with a lot of young person references. We got in the original Nutty Professor, some Miami Vice.
We got the middle-aged white man demographic we're trying to reach right there.
Unlock.
Let's start by talking about the Mariners. We kind of wanted to make this our first sports-centric show. And it's both your backgrounds a lot more than it is my background. Let's talk about the Mariners, and let's just talk about baseball in general. The Mariners, they start in about 10 minutes. They're not good. Nobody expected them to be, but there's certainly a future to look forward to beyond even the players on the field now. I read in MLB Prospect or something. They have the number 3 farm system. In the country. So we have. I've never known the Mariners in some sort of rebuild, except for like the first 15 games of last season. But Kyle Lewis has been a joy to watch night after night, and I don't expect him to stay on the streak that he is, but I also expect him to learn from the mistakes that he's making, some of the bad pitches that he's swinging at. Danny, what about the Mariners has got you excited?
That for a long time, the Mariners have been the worst case scenario where they've been trying to be good, but bad. And then when they would decide, like, we're going to rebuild, they do it kind of like the on the fly, hey, we'll take a year to retrofit everything, and then we'll be good to go. And they didn't do what they honestly probably should have done 15 years ago, which was just say, all right, we had a run of success. It's time for us to kind of suck it up for a couple years and be truly terrible. And in that time, accumulate a bunch of assets that we think will get us good. And this is really honestly the second full year of Seattle doing that. And they're not particularly good, but coming out and saying that, hey, we're going to be bad, hoping to get good. Like, I can get on board with that because I think that's realistic. I don't know for sure that they're going to get good, but at least they have a chance of getting good. Whereas before it was, we'd like to thread the needle, and if everything goes right, we can be like the 4th of 5 playoff teams and make the playoffs, and then we'll all feel at least a little bit better. Like, they've got a shot.
A lot better if we make the playoffs.
Well, but Is it if you make the playoffs as a wild card team and you play one of those one and done games, like you play
one more day?
Game. Yeah, but is that worth it? Like, is that much better than missing the playoffs?
Feel good as a Mariner.
Yeah, kind of. But don't you want to win a title? Like, that's why you play. You want to win a World Series. And
I want the articles to stop that say that's been the Mariners have the longest drought in baseball history, or in of current teams in terms of missing the playoffs.
I would like that. Yeah, you know what I'm going to say though is that's kind of like the false hope, like the Bills. The Bills no longer have that distinction, right? A couple years ago, that the Bills made the playoffs and they had the longest active postseason drought of any. Do you think Bills fans feel that much better about it because they made the playoffs and got whooped there? Like they didn't win. I think
their psyche is so damaged.
No, you want to be good. Like you don't want to be the hey. Remember that one year where we barely got into the playoffs? At least we didn't miss them that year.
But aren't we kind of far even away from that as an organization? With
right
the
now, yes.
Yeah, we're far. We're even far away from that one game. Like.
Yeah.
When you look at the competition
if
that's
we
out
get
there
good,
baseball,
it's not just one game.
Yeah.
If we get good, like 3 years from now, like it could be a team that's like you're like, oh, this is a team that could win the World Series. Like it's not just they definitely should get in the playoffs, and maybe they'll even do something better. I'm okay with taking it on the chin for a couple of years. Maybe they'll be better toward the second half. They might be a good team the second half of next season. I don't think they'll make the playoffs or really even contend for the playoffs, but I think they'll be a good team in the second half of next season. And then I think 2022, I think they will have a shot to make the playoffs.
I just thought what I always just ask from the Mariners is, can you play meaningful baseball post All-Star game break? That's it. And, not last year, but the year before, they despite a meager run differential, they stayed competitive for a long time and then just got swept up by clearly better teams. But they were fun. If you can make the summer fun, I'm not at the point where I can really care about the fall all that much. It's just, let's not clearly be in or around the basement come August 1st.
Well, the American League fixed it for you this year because there's so many teams that are going to make the playoffs that I think you can even be rolling around in the basement and think like we're a hot week away from getting up into at least getting into the mudroom.
How much comfort is baseball's return providing you? Because there was nothing live new coming out. I started watching even Korean baseball. I watched golf, which I'd never had before. It was fun because
Korean baseball's fun.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It would come on at a weird time. It would be like 2:05 a.m. start. There's a guy on Twitter, Joe Vieira, who would always point out this is the thinnest of Mariners connections to this team, but there is one actually, and I enjoyed it. But then they announced baseball has come back, and I do have to say, of all the sports, I'm getting provided comfort now from watching the NBA and certainly the NHL. But watching a baseball game still feels like just this 9-inning reminder of this awful and odd era that we're in right now. I don't like the cardboard fans, actually.
Oh, no kidding.
I don't.
Why do you? See, I'm interested in this. I actually think that I miss the crowds in the NBA more than I miss the crowds in baseball.
But you can focus on enough on the court that you don't notice it nearly. And in hockey, you don't notice it all. Like if you've been watching playoff hockey at all, there's not much difference. But
I'm having an issue with playoff hockey because I feel like it looks like a video game. I feel like and I'm not sure if it's just the way that the video quality is now. Like I've definitely gotten the feeling like sometimes where I'm like, this could be NHL 2020, and I'm not sure that I would know the difference. Like
pixelation wise, it's just looking
the colors, like the way it is. Maybe it's my TV, but like there's been a couple times where I've turned it on and I'm like, that doesn't. This looks like when I walk into Costco and I see the weird liquid, like whatever the super expensive TV is, where it looks like an aquarium. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, that's frightening to me. And that's kind of how the hockey game looks to me.
Maybe that's the high tech. That's the new wave. It's beyond our comprehension at this point. Now, at one point,
what happened to the glowing puck? Didn't they even used to make the puck glow?
Yeah, they got rid of that. Hockey's sort of a difficult thing in that if you don't know the game, it is a difficult watch on television. because the puck is quite tiny. And a lot of times, no matter what the angle, the puck is shielded by one of the boards. So if you don't know the rules, if you don't know the flow of the game, it's tough to watch. It's easier in person. And in person, it's just such a loud, enthusiastic live experience that even if you don't know all the rules, you're having a good time. Not as much on TV. So the NHL tried to fix that with this ridiculous plan to have this blue orb or this purple orb fly over the puck at all times. And this is when Fox had the games for a while. Fox was just making. You remember when Fox had like those? This was for the NFL. Those robots. Well, Fox's graphics. Yeah.
Cletus.
Right. And then when the puck would go over a certain amount of speed, like 90 miles an hour or something, it would get like these streams behind it to make it look like a rocket ship taking off.
It was the dumbest thing ever.
It was
the most distracting thing ever in the history of sports television.
It was really bad.
It was perfect though, man. Like it was perfect because it was like you Americans need to have like it light up and catch on fire to be able to follow this thing.
Right.
Like you need some sort of visual
rocket shooting out of it.
Oh, now I get it. He just hit the magic.
It's on fire. Hell yeah, I love hockey.
Watch out for the banana peel. It's Mario Kart hockey.
Well, even if you go to a Mariners game now, and I want to get back to the NHL, but even if you go to a Mariners game, every second in between innings is occupied by some sort of ancillary event, whether it be on the screen or they introduce like 7 veterans a game, or they have some sort of performance. Like it doesn't seem like, and this is something that I think the Kraken are very well aware of. It doesn't seem like even people at a live sports event are satisfied by just being at the live sports event. Like they need something else to entertain themselves, which is really strange to me.
Yeah.
I don't know when it became that for every sport. I know that the NBA, I feel, was the first to make that every down second something was going to be screaming or exploding.
Yes.
And now it's definitely that way in all sports.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with the money and the way that they're marketing things now when it comes to sports. Everything has some kind of advertising or marketing attached to it. And, we, especially Americans, we need to be stimulated at all times, from all areas in order to, to make it entertaining and fun for us. So I think that's a large piece of it.
There's definitely part of it, but there's also this idea of, and maybe Karl Marx would have something to say about this, but the idea that all these sports leagues have is that they constantly have to grow audience. Like, right. It's kind of, you can never be like, our sport is full and healthy right now.
True.
We've always got to do things to attract people. So it becomes like, what can we do to get the person who's not interested in baseball? Interested in baseball.
And baseball has a bigger problem with that than any other sport, because baseball relies entirely on sentimentality.
It does, and I would agree with you. I think one of baseball's biggest problems, though, is that they're so paranoid about becoming less popular that they're doing things that are going to alienate their core customers.
Like what?
Like the tiebreaker rule, putting a runner on second base, which they're doing right now when you get to extra innings to help decide the game, making all of the different like speed up the game rules about when a relief pitcher comes in, he has to face at least 3 batters before.
But you're alienating purists, and purists always grouse, but purists never leave the game. Like, did anyone ever really stop watching because the DH was introduced to the American League?
No, probably not. And that's a fair point. But I also feel like the desire to get the Mountain Dew swilling 13-year-old who can't spend any amount of time like focusing on something, the desire to like cater to that person actually makes it a worse product for the person who's like, I like baseball. Like, you would think that you want to satisfy your major customer, but you kind of don't. Like, no, you want to like, give me the illiterate 12-year-old demographic, because that's the way
diversify your market. You got to keep growing, diversify your market, son.
And let's bring in again from 710 Sports, Jessamyn McIntyre. Thank you so much for overcoming our tech problems.
Sorry about that.
You got here just in time for Danny's diatribe against young people, who he clearly has a lot of disdain.
Yeah, I don't like the youngsters.
Yeah, that sounds on brand for Danny, actually.
Yeah.
So
Illiterate,
It
Mountain Dew
happens.
swilling.
Yeah. I started
Are the
out with
kids-
15-year-olds and I moved down to 12. Although, like I'm not sure when it happened when I became old, but it's definitely come. I was on. There's a text chain at 710 that includes like a number. I mean, there's probably like 12 people. Like 12 or 15 people on it.
Yeah.
Like, these people will exchange like 170 text messages in a day. So I was on that thing for like a week, and I'm like, too much. Whatever you kids are doing.
I'm a part of
like,
that text chain, Danny. You left us.
I can't take it. So I explained, like, I like you all individually, but God, group texts are beyond me. Like, I can't do group text.
I understand.
You haven't absolutely put them on dark mode yet? On silent?
Oh, I can do that.
Oh,
it's
I got no clue.
Moon emoji where you put them to sleep for a little while.
Yeah. Come on, Boomer.
Really? Yeah, I got no clue.
God, don't call
No,
him that,
they gotta be
Terry.
out.
Don't call him that.
You don't say.
He's not there yet.
That's part of the thing of getting old, though, is that do you remember an age where it was shameful if you had no Friday night plans? That it was kind of like embarrassing, and you were just desperate to be out and with others. Now it's even when I say yes to something, I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna regret that.
I really hope they cancel.
Yeah, I really hope something comes up, because everything sounds fun. Like 2 months out, like, oh yeah, I definitely want to go see the new display at the Seattle Art Museum. And then that day comes, and you're like, oh, what can I do to make sure the Seattle Art Museum stays closed today? Because
can I get diarrhea? Thank you.
It's like the bowel syndrome.
Hey guys, I really need an actual chronic sickness right now.
It's like the excuses you used to use as a young person to get out of work, you now use to get out of like social engagements.
We are really alienating a whole segment of a demographic right now.
Oh, I'm certain.
Which ones?
Young people?
The young ones?
Yeah.
Oh, we're trying to target those.
I've already made it clear I don't care about them. Like, I don't care about growing my market in that audience. Like, all you TikTokers can kick rocks.
Right.
Hey, those TikTokers are hilarious.
TikTokers will put you down.
I know.
TikTokers shut down a Trump event in Tulsa, so I am never going to criticize them.
I thought it was K-pop. It was TikTok.
TikTok. They were the TikTok K-pop.
You don't stop. They're like synonyms to me. The people who stand for other things, that happens mostly on TikTok. I even felt like weird getting into Instagram as late as I did. I know I'm certainly well past an entrance into TikTok.
It's for everybody, Zach. It's for everybody.
Is it? Because all the videos that I see, the only time that I see someone older than me in a viral TikTok video, they're being somehow mocked. So I prefer just not even.
No, kids get their parents into it. It was a really good quarantine activity for people.
I'm an anti-talker. And I'll tell you that because I have 3 daughters and they spend all day on the talk. And I'm like, hey, can we coordinate? Can we do something here? Can we talk? No, they're talking. So yeah, and I'm an anti-talker. I started an account and I have posted nothing. And I follow like no people.
You're just there to kind of see. Are you just kind of there to see where your kids are up to?
Well, no, they kept forcing me like, Dad, you should get a TikTok account. It'd be so fun. It'd be good for you. Start it up. And I was like, all right. So I started, and then I didn't know what to do. Like,
you just watch it and laugh. Most of it's hilarious.
Yeah.
You got to get your kids to coordinate some stuff. Like, you can get something out of your kids for that. Like all of the money and time that you spent raising them, they can help raise your social media profile. I was on TikTok. I watch it. It's funny. I wish there was a violence channel though, like where, because like some of them I don't like seeing. Like where I want it to be. I like the ones where there's some sort of payoff with somebody getting smacked.
Yeah.
So I wish I could option for that. Like, let me see someone getting struck in the face. Like, if there was that channel, I'd be more into it.
Danny needs open hand slap channel.
Yeah. I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Just an
somebody
open
getting smacked.
hand slap. That is, by the way, Danny's like complete justice, like level of justice is an open hand slap.
That's like old school, ultimate disrespect. You want to duel somebody if you open hand slap, right? We're going to take 10 paces after I slap you.
Have you ever delivered or received an open hand slap?
I've been smacked. Yeah.
You've been smacked. Did you deserve it?
A couple times. Yeah. Every time.
You did.
More times than I've gotten it. Yes.
You earned it.
Does that end? Did that end the confrontation? Or
yeah, because I did not want to fight that dude. Like Kyle Smith, I did not want to fight. Yeah, he'd been watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for a solid 2.5 hours. And I was telling him what was going to happen at the end. And he was mad. Like, he was like, do not tell me. I'm being serious. Don't tell me what happened. And then I told him, and I didn't tell him what actually happened, but I pretended like I was telling him what was going to actually happen. And then he sprung out. And as he was coming at me, I kicked a cooler at him because I recognized the freight train that was coming my way. And I hit him in his knee with the cooler. Yeah. And then he kind of hit me on the shoulder and moved me sideways about 3 feet and then smacked me.
This is sounding like the end of The Shining to me. You're Shelley Duvall.
That was
Jack Nicholson. Like,
it sounds well earned.
Well, it's like one of those classic examples where you're like, oh yeah, I just did something that I'm completely incapable of backing up, and I need to any means necessary to fend off this bear that's coming my way.
Did you cry?
I didn't cry. No, I went to sleep though.
Wait, from the slap?
No, like I was just I was
okay.
in a state that I decided that it was time for me to go to bed.
Yeah.
Like if that's the sort of things that were being created around, it was time for me to take a nap and be more rational when I woke up.
How old were you when this happened?
19 or 20.
Wow, that was a very adult decision of you.
Yeah.
See, and let me tell you, so slapping someone is so much more disrespectful than punching someone. And it's a difficult thing to handle as a person or a man, I'll just say it like that, because you get slapped and if somebody slaps you good, that thing hurts, man. But it's not a hurt like a punch where I could be like, oh, he punched me and I'm supposed to be hurt, but you get slapped and it hurts. You gotta hold that in, like.
Can't let anyone know that hurt.
A slap's more demoralizing too, because it's almost like your opponent doesn't respect your.
I don't respect you enough to punch.
Yeah. A punch is like an invitation to a fight, and a punch will produce probably some adrenaline, whereas a slap produces shame and sleepiness in Danny's case.
or an understanding that like we'd reached the threshold. There are two UFC fighters who are from Stockton, the Diaz brothers, Nate and Nick Diaz, and both of them will perform in fights what's known as the Stockton slap, where they will open hand slap a man that they are full contact fighting against. And then when Nate's done it, he'll point and laugh at the dude like whack, and then point like I just hit you, which like I'm not even trying to knock you out right now. I just want you to know I can do that whenever I want to.
Oh, disrespectful. Yeah. Pure disrespectful.
Yeah.
That's mean.
Yeah, being taunted like that in the ring. Do they always win? I'm very novice when it comes to UFC. Are they good?
Nick's pretty good. Nick's lost a lot of fights, but Nick's got this weird amount of respect for him. Like everybody respects his fighting abilities, but mostly he loses to high-level opponents and then whines. And it's really weird that he is considered such a he's revered among like UFC fight fans, but he's on the face of it, if you described it, he's kind of annoying, but everybody kind of likes it.
Let's talk. I did want to get back to the NHL for a second, because the Kraken has broken a record in terms of merchandise sales for a brand new franchise, for an expansion team. The Golden Knights were declared a major success when they came out, and their first season was a tremendous, unparalleled success for an expansion team, making it all the way to Stanley Cup Finals. But for sales, they sold more tickets than they had to sell, which is really impressive. Not all that surprising in Las Vegas. I don't know why it took so long for sports teams to move in, but their merchandise sales were also off the charts as well, until you compare it to the Kraken. Like the Kraken finding a Kraken hat now is actually, it takes some work. It takes like 3 or 4 visits to 3 or 4 different places, perhaps. It wasn't my first choice for a name, but they have to be 2 of the best design logos that I've ever seen. What was your reaction?
I don't like the name, but I like the designs and I like the colors.
What name did you want?
I wanted the Sockeyes because I wanted a fish with his fins up, like 1930s boxing style. He had a little shiner of a black eye. Like I recognize the issues. I recognize that, dude. But so we take a made up thing that's singular. Like there's 2 things that are problematic with the Kraken. The first of all, it's one of the stupid singular nicknames, and you never know what to do with. Is it its? Is it their? Do you say them? Do you say
use your English language context cues, Danny?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work. Singular language. Singular.
It's just not that difficult.
The other thing is there's no regional tie. Like Kraken has nothing to do. I mean, unless you're going to say like, oh, there's some sort of Scandinavian heritage, and that's where.
No one nowhere in the world could, have a regional tie to a fictional creature. I mean, they don't exist.
Other than the Kraken, what's the best made up? Like
Dragon
character. Dragon's a lame nickname for a team.
The Kraken is actually it is a scary, fictional creature, but a squid that big is certainly a lot more intimidating than something that costs $29.90 a pound at Metropolitan Market. Like the Sockeyes, it inspires no fear in the other team. It's like I went to Boston University and we were the Terriers. Like, there's no dog that's afraid to challenge a terrier.
Okay, but like the Jazz?
The Jazz, at least they started in New Orleans, right?
But
and
is
then
that intimidating in any way whatsoever?
No, it's
also singular.
They did have a regional, and now they're in Utah, where saxophonists are actually
the Lakers. That originated in
Minneapolis, yeah.
And so let's just ease off of the regionality there.
Yeah.
So those were my initial objections.
Yeah.
After seeing the sort of the logos and how everything looks, I think it looks awesome. Like I really like how it looks.
Yeah, their promo video was extraordinary.
That was fantastic, and I love the red color that's involved. I love the different shades of blue. I think it looks awesome.
And the tentacle going up, and then the eye,
and then the other logo that the Space Needle's incorporated.
Oh, so good.
Although the Space Needle means nothing to me, it was very clever.
Why?
It is synonymous with
Space Needle.
I know, and that's what. But do you ever have a clamoring to go there? Like, oh,
yes.
I never do. I always feel like. It holds no interest for me whatsoever. I went there in 8th grade. Oh yeah, I've been.
World's Fair. Defining element of a skyline that doesn't do anything for you.
I get that it's an important part. Like I like seeing it, as part of our skyline. But in terms of actually my desire to visit there as an iconic, tourist destination, I go to Pike Place all the time because that's actually a functional destination.
Fish.
Well, I think that goes hand in hand with us being from here. I mean, I think that's here. I don't know. I've never been to New York, but I would think that most people in New York just don't wake up in the morning and go to Statue of Liberty or Empire State Building. And when we think of New York, that's what we think of. Like, oh my God, New York! We got to go see the Statue of Liberty. We got to go to Empire State. Everyone's like, what? Why? So I mean, people from everyone that I know are like, oh my God, you live out in Seattle by the Space Needle.
Yeah.
No, I live in Snohomish, but whatever.
Okay, as someone who grew up in New York, that was like field trips in 4th grade.
Yep.
And that's it. So I get it, but
I bought one of those foam Statue of Liberty hats and wore it with no irony whatsoever because the innocence of a 5th grader. Yeah, we did Staten Island. We did the Statue of Liberty, and then they took us to some lousy place to eat in Times Square. But at that point, I'd never seen anything like Times Square, so it was pretty remarkable.
Times Square is Times Square. I mean,
yeah, it is.
Right now, it's not.
I have
not right now. It's not. True. Right now, you want to go down there and you see some advertisements from this play that'll be debuting March 13th.
True.
It's like a time capsule from 5 months ago.
And even since I've been there, it's sort of evolved into something that I don't know if I'd recognize as much. You had a lot of people renting Iron Man costumes and having their picture taken with tourists, which is sort of a weird thing, even as a tourist, to drop $5 on to have your picture taken with someone who's not Iron Man, but who's dressed like Iron Man. And that like flooded Times Square. I never knew it when it was like the grimy New York that Giuliani supposedly cleaned up and that cranky old New Yorkers miss.
Oh, just stepped everyone out. That's it.
Yeah,
One-way bus tickets. Bye.
Gotta get out of here.
Hey,
Jessamyn,
I would say for the
did you have another choice to above and beyond Kraken that you
no,
were?
Kraken was my number
Kraken
one.
was it.
Yeah, and everyone was shaming me for it. Danny, one of them.
true.
Sockeyes was my second, though.
Yeah.
But I wanted Kraken from the beginning, and I never thought it would happen because usually teams go with a more conservative choice. And
Yeah.
I didn't, and Kraken is not a conservative choice. And
It's
I
not.
was
It was
just
a risk.
thinking of like the jerseys and the logos and everything that could go into it. And I loved the idea. So Kraken was always my number one. And I was so excited. I thought I was being punked. I was like, and then I like checked all of the official Twitters, all of ESPN. Oh my gosh, this is
Actually happening.
Yeah.
That was such a fun day. That was one of the best days I've had in the pandemic news-wise. Actually, the best because everything else has been just full-on disaster.
Yeah, we don't need to
Hey, Another team is going through a naming process right now. The Washington football team, formerly known as the Washington Redskins, no longer. And I wanted to bring someone in to talk about it. His name is Stephen Mullen Moses. He is a member of the Snoqualmie tribe. He's the director of archaeology and historic preservation for the Snoqualmie tribe. And back on June 11th, I tweeted, how is it even possible that they're still called the Redskins? And Stephen, I thought that your response to it was it should have been such a blatantly obvious perspective, but it was one that I never had before. Thanks for joining us, by the way. And what are your thoughts on the then Redskins and why the name at that point had not been changed?
Well, it's a good question. I think when it comes to the idea of particularly indigenous mascots, such as that team, such as the Cleveland Indians, even the proposed hockey team with the totems, a lot of people wanted for Seattle, have roots in systemic racism. But beyond that, it's not just the racism, it's the idea that indigenous people are relics of the past, that we're not a living, thriving culture. A big part of what I do is try to get people to understand that natives have been here in Western Washington for at least 12,000 years. There's an archaeological site that's almost 13,000 years old. We've been here, we're still here, but more importantly, we're more than just those watered down concepts of the logos that you see, or the non-indigenous people playing native people in Hollywood films and on television. Just because people don't fit the stereotype that you see in the logos, in the images. An example that I always like to use is I don't look like someone you would typically think of as an indigenous person. For one, I have lots of freckles. My last name's Mullen, so obviously I'm a little bit of Irish. I'm wearing a Doctor Who shirt. I love Doctor Who. I love the Seahawks. I am part of the Snoqualmie culture, Snoqualbuchad. I'm Snoqualmie, but I'm part of today's modern society as well. And not just me, but the thousands of indigenous people across this country. And it's when we're not looked at as a living people, we're reduced to just those Chief Wahoo looking ideals, or Johnny Depp playing Tonto. Things that just don't seem like a big deal to people, but have a detrimental effect on how Native youth can view themselves growing up. I mean, if you see yourself as, Chief Wahoo with the bright red face, the high cheekbones, and that's not how you look, but you identify as indigenous, there's been a lot of studies that have shown that it tears your self-esteem apart. And it's something that I think we've been saying for decades, but the sports industry has really just started to catch up on that idea that, maybe this is offensive and maybe we should rethink this concept.
I remember I grew up in a high school district where all of the local high schools were named after native tribes. There was Shawnee, Lenape, and Cherokee, and my team's name was the Renegades, and my logo, the school's logo, was like a frothing savage wielding axe. That was how, and it's recently been rethought, but nobody objected to it. And I never found an objection to it because that's how Native culture had always been presented to me in every medium I could think of.
Exactly. Well, you think of John Wayne movies and you think of all of the indigenous people in those movies and how the Indians are the bad guys. And most of those people aren't even played by indigenous actors. And so, I mean, American society is brought up to think of us as something that's, like I said, it's not living and breathing now, but something that's, from the Old West days. And it's a hard thing to get people to understand because, like you said, it's on the surface doesn't seem inherently racist or inherently wrong if that's not your personal identity. And I think it's just trying to get whatever it takes to get sort of those light bulbs to click in people's heads. And in my experience, it has to come from outside of the community, outside of the culture, because like I said, natives have been saying it forever, but it's taken pressure from outside forces to finally push, in this case, the NFL and Washington to move beyond those stereotypes.
Well, Stephen, do you have anybody have any questions for him on the renaming of the Washington football team?
Go ahead,
Danny.
Danny.
How did you feel when you found out that Washington? How did you feel, Stephen, when you found out Washington was going to change the nickname? Because there have been other things that have happened. Like today, Washington named its new president of their business operations, who's black. And there's part of me that will feel like that's a positive thing. Clearly, I also don't want to applaud someone for doing something that should have been done 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or something that should have never happened. How did you feel when you found out that the nickname was going to be retired, as they said?
No, that's a very good point. I think my first reaction was, honestly, I didn't believe it. It's something that you would think is from The Onion. So, of course, the first thing I did was verify a number of different sources and then became cautiously optimistic as things progressed, and it looked like that was the case. It is overall, it's a small step. In the grand scheme of issues that face Indigenous people today, mascots are just a part of that. And so it's a step in the right direction. I wouldn't say I'm overly excited or enthusiastic about it because it is way overdue. And for a lot of people that have been fighting this change, for this change for 30 years or so, it's cautious optimism, I think, is a good way to think about it.
So I know that the Indigenous community is not, a monolith. There are lots of different opinions and different ideas, but speaking from your own personal perspective and your own personal opinion, is there a way to rethink this entire thing, our way that we use mascots in the national football or in professional sports, period, that we could say our intention here is to honor the Native American culture, to honor the, in my opinion, fierce warriors. And that's what you want to name your organization after when you're talking about professional sports team. I want to name my team after somebody that I respect, I endear, and I honor them. So is there ways to rethink this whole thing?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think from my understanding, was it Florida State University, the Seminoles? And the universities work really close with the Seminole tribe in Florida to ensure that how they present their imagery is acceptable to the Seminole people. I think the danger that you get in is when you think about like a pan-Indian concept, all natives are the same. When even here in Washington, there's over 20 different native tribes, and we have a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. So I think there's that fine line between wanting to honor and wanting to and sort of condescending to. it's a lot of it's outreach, people reaching out to the local communities, and then just creating a dialogue. I mean, I think that's the first step, is get people talking about it, and on both sides. It's easy to say something is offensive or not offensive. It's much more difficult to have a civilized conversation about, well, this is why I think it isn't, this is why I think it is. How can we come together and sort of create something positive?
And remarkably, it does seem like the Seminoles are the only, well, I guess maybe the Blackhawks as well, who consulted, the natives in the region that they were going to use to build that mascot imagery. Because when there's been lots of controversy about the Braves and the Indians and the Redskins forever, but the Seminoles, when people try to sort of lump them in, it seems like the Seminole Nation is always like, no, they have actually been incredibly good, which is, I guess I bring this up because it's shocking that any level of responsibility is coming out of Florida State.
That's a fair point.
Stephen, if people want to learn more, again, you're all about the historical preservation of the Snoqualmie tribe. What would be a good place for them to find out more?
Well, I think there's really Twitter is a good place to look. There's a lot of indigenous Twitterers out there that are been trying to spread this word for ever. So if you just do a search for hashtag not my mascot, you'll find a lot of good resources. And anyone that just general that has an interest in like local history, just reach out to your local tribes. I would say Stouch is there's 3 different tribes you could reach out to learn about them up in Snohomish. Snoqualmie being one, Tulalip, and then the Snohomish tribe as well. So yeah, it's just reach out. Don't be afraid to contact the tribes, and definitely follow some of those native people on Twitter that you see out there. There's a lot of good information that comes out of the community, and native humor is the best humor. It's dry, it's sarcastic, it's great.
I didn't even know that was like a separate genre. Yeah, that's
that when I get off.
Yeah.
I think we can roll with that.
and Stephen himself is a very good follow on Twitter. It's at OMMMMoses. Thank you so much for making some time for us tonight. I appreciate it, Stephen.
No, my pleasure. Thank you. And just I've listened to all of you on the radio. It's awesome to be here talking to you guys, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate everything.
Thanks, buddy. Have a great Monday, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Stephen.
You really did point out that when I thought I was in this organization, I never was in Boy Scouts, but I was in something growing up called Indian Guides, which at the time I saw nothing wrong with whatsoever because all my friends were in it. And basically what we did was just masquerade as what we thought of Indian folk. We would paint our faces, we would put feathers in our hair, we would give ourselves Indian names. I mean, no one was saying native or indigenous at the time. It was Indian. And I remember I was Little Buffalo. And we had talking sticks, like all, and then we would go on camping trips and just be unleashed in the woods and just, do the whooping sounds and everything like that. And it's remarkable looking back at that now. If your entire culture was painted only, with that brush, how difficult it would be to see that and see that that's the only representation of your culture. And then looking in the mirror like Stephen did and being someone with freckles and a Doctor Who shirt and realizing but I don't look like that. I have no connection, or I've little connection to that imagery.
Yeah, I remember an interview with a mother who had a young child going to an Illinois game because they had the Fighting Illini. And, they had, the shirtless chief, but that is a very respected headdress in the Native American culture. And her son was so upset by that because it was almost, for that perception, it seemed like a mockery was being made out of it. And they were trying to change that mascot for quite a while, and the school fought against it as, no, this is supposed to be respectful. Well, we're honoring this culture. Well, Who made that decision? Definitely a very old rich white man made that decision. And so maybe listen to the people who actually care about it, and maybe there is a way to do it respectfully, but this kid thought that is the highest honor that you could have, is having that headdress as a chief, and that's what he was raised with. And this is not that long ago. I'm talking within the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when people's culture is reduced that way, I just because it doesn't affect us doesn't mean you shouldn't care about it.
No, especially when we pretend that we're incorporating native culture by naming counties and cities and roads and everything out of respect, but then don't do any homework beyond that. What you were just talking about, Jessamyn, reminds me of this one episode of Saved by the Bell, where Zach Morris finds out he's like 1/16th. I don't know what tribe. We'll go with Iroquois. Whatever it is, and then finds someone who's this native expert who dies in the episode too and appears as a ghost.
It was a morbid episode. Zach.
You missed this?
Yeah, me too. I felt like I was a Saved by the Bell expert. I am completely unfamiliar with this.
You don't remember this one?
Yeah, this is a classic one. Okay, and then there's a web show too called Zach Morris's Trash that points out how awful person he acts. It's so
fantastic.
Good. Because at the time you grow up, you're like, I want to be Zach Morris, and then later you're like, I want to be anybody but him. But in this episode, at first he gets assigned this task. He doesn't take it seriously, but then he decides that this is important after the expert on the tribe explains to him the rich tapestry of his history. So he shows up in class just as Jessamyn described, like in full-on headdress, war paint, talks like we thought the How type native cadence. And then at that point you're like, as the audience, you're supposed to be like, wow, he's responsibly embracing his lineage, when in reality, like it was a Minion show.
It was like the most appropriation-ish
Totally was
ever.
And his teacher was like A+.
Yeah, that's the word.
Like Zach, all the stereotypes that we could find, put them on screen.
It was bad.
And praise that as cultural outreach. Look
at
how
it was
the 90s.
It was borderline a very special episode. Like this is how you respect other cultures. You dress up as them, and try to act. It was a very more episode
for them.
Yeah,
and painted on a white California boy.
Let's talk. Let's wrap it up. We'll stay on the Washington National or the Washington football team, which I think is a truly fine name if they just kept it that. I love it.
I'm down.
I think it'd be good punishment, honestly. Like where it's just like you guys don't deserve a nickname. Like let's just be like you guys. You guys don't get a nickname until you make the playoffs.
Oh,
like you sit there with your generic, and not only that, but you're not going to be able to sell Coke. Like you're just going to sell Shasta. Like
right.
You get all generic stuff to sell until you make the playoffs.
Not even
brand.
Not even
have concessions. You've got vending machines.
I would even say Shasta with Fago, what all the juggalos are in.
That's the juggalos. Oh,
you don't even get all beef hot dogs. You get like the chicken pork blend.
But
this came from the end.
Or how about this would even be harder? Like you have to have the same starting quarterback for 3 straight years. They'll
maybe
never
a more difficult punishment.
Yeah,
but I'm with DCFC. Like they shouldn't be a football team; they should be a football club. We talked about that on our show, and I'm like DCFC. There we go.
Yeah, great.
They just get to wear shin guards, no helmet, shin guards.
That'll toughen you up.
From a capitalism perspective, because there have been some flurries of strong calls for the Redskins to change their name, and then they sort of just peter out. Clearly, just the mood of the country now on institutions that were altering.
I don't think it's the country. I think it's the money got scared.
Do you? Because the money should have. But that's what I never got. Is like why as Dan Snyder, if he rebranded 4 years ago, when I remember there was quite a big push, that's a whole new line of merchandise that you get to sell. And there's going to be some cranky people who are like, I'm never going again. You're going to go again. You're going to buy a new hat. I never understood it from just a perspective of just a cash grab.
That's Snyder. So Snyder's point was not about making money. Snyder's was about proving a point, or whether it was nobody's going to make me change what my team's called, or whether it was people said that it was wrapped up in how he felt about his father and preserving the history of the team. Like whatever, he had long stopped being pragmatic or rational about it. Like it was a hill he was going to die on. Like it's very clear that I think he was told, like, you're not going to be able to field a team if you have that nickname, that players are not going to play against your team. Like I don't think he finally saw the light. Like I think he was basically told, like, you can either choose to own the team or you can choose to have the nickname, but you're not going to get both. Like you're not going to have an NFL team. Well, I think it's probably in part the commissioner, but it has to do with FedEx. So FedEx is the naming rights of the stadium. And then that dude's a minority owner. And I think that's what happened, that his big money partners, like the people who are rich, saw him as a liability, and his unwillingness to change it as a liability. And they're like, we're more worried about how many people are going to be furious at us than we're worried about making you mad. Like I think the big money dudes got scared.
So Daniel Snyder then is not really on a pathway to any sort of redemption here. He's just caving to financial interests.
Yeah, he's irredeemable.
No, that guy will never get redemption. And I think that's actually the most financially stupid thing he could have done, because he's had an opportunity for the past he's always had the opportunity, but the past couple of years, I feel like he could have capitalized on actually changing the name, selling new merchandise, then everything that you have, if you want to be some sort of historical, I've got this, then that becomes a relic, or you've got these things, these are history, but then you get to sell all new merchandise. And even if you're not actually doing it for the right reason financially, I thought that was just a miss. Even if you're still the jerk that Daniel Snyder is for not changing it for the right reasons, financially, it could have been a windfall. And now it's, hey, you're going to spend a year as Washington football team, and we hope that you want to attach your name to that. Okay, great, thanks. Like it's just so dumb. There's so many misses there, and it really he could have capitalized on doing the right thing, even if that wasn't really exactly the only intention.
Let me ask you guys this question, and Zach and I have talked about this before on previous shows, and in terms of the entire Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd thing, and how for a period of time it seemed like that was our sole focus in this country, is to address these racial issues that have always been present, but all of a sudden they became important because we're in the middle of a pandemic and there's nothing else to focus on, nothing else to deal with. And so that's why it became our sole focus. Would this thing have happened? Would we have had this conversation? Would they be looking at changing the name of the Washington Redskins if we wouldn't have been in this moment? If we wouldn't have had the entire pandemic and the entire Black Lives Matter movement and this entire focus on racial equality and equity?
I think it eventually would have. It's a great question of what the tipping point is. I think that the country's been building toward this, whether it was Michael Brown in St. Louis and the reaction to other killings of Black men, the hands of law enforcement. I think the reaction has become increasingly strident. And I think that you were seeing a situation where people were going into the streets. And that's pretty unusual in America. It's not unusual somewhere like France, but seeing that and then seeing it be, I think one of the differences here, and I think some of it was because of the pandemic, is that you had, there were plenty of white people that joined the movements in the streets. And I think that was part of it. I do believe that people being pent up and cooped up and kind of everybody seeing this made people more willing and more engaged sort of in the opposition. But I do feel that Black Lives Matter as a movement has been gaining momentum. And I think one of the truly incredible parts about the movement is it's not about one leader. It's not about one person. Like I know people have talked about the infrastructure of the organization, but it's really like that statement and the spirit that it embodies is not, it's not one person. It's not one charismatic figure. It's not someone like there's really, and it taps into a really powerful ideal. I think that it was, I don't know if it would have happened if George Floyd was killed and we didn't have a pandemic. I don't know if we would have seen the same widespread protests and people taking to the street. But I think eventually we would have gotten there, even without a pandemic.
I agree. I agree that eventually we would have gotten there. I absolutely don't think it would have happened this year. Dan Snyder has been he was forced. He was absolutely forced.
And FedEx probably felt pressure after seeing other companies cutting their ties with,
and they should.
Yeah.
Amazon stopped selling their merchandise. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's tragic
Nike.
that it takes something like that to make that change, but at least it wasn't in vain.
Interesting that you were sort of heralding, just to focus on Black Lives Matter for a moment, the lack of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't entirely. You're seeing that as sort of a positive thing, that it's a chorus of voices rather than that one charismatic leader.
I think it's one of the unique things. I don't think it's either negative or positive, and I wouldn't diminish but it makes, there's a collective entity that it's the ethic that is expressed, that sentiment, I think is what motivates people. And like social dynamics and how different groups form. I think that idea of it's very decentralized, I think in some ways makes it possible to have a much wider and far-reaching round of protests, because it's not depending upon who's going to be there and who's organizing it. Like it's an ideal in many ways, I think. And I think it's different from what we've seen past civil rights organizations, and the way that they have functioned and mobilized people.
It is, but we have seen a leaderless movement, in the past decade.
I mean, Occupy, right? Like
yeah.
Occupies, and there's some translations there. It's Occupy is a very simple to translate idea, like that. It's a complicated social movement, and I think in very much the same way, Black Lives Matter is it's an ideal to express that kind of the simplicity of it. It's very, very powerful.
Let's finish up with just some recommendations on where we all have, Terry and I probably more than the two of you, time to kill. And
I ain't got no job.
And I'd like to pretend I'm reading twice as much as I actually am. For the most part, I'm avoiding news except when necessary, and just trying to get immersed in good TV shows and films. And you can't possibly watch all the good stuff. It's extraordinary. I don't know how people got through the Spanish flu. I don't know how I survived in like 2004 without the constant amount of wonderful distractions that I have now. But what are you watching? Or you can recommend a book if you want to just come off smarter than the rest of us. I don't give a shit. And we'll start with Danny.
I am going to recommend a book and then a show.
Okay.
Blacktop Wasteland. It is a crime thriller. The author is S.A. Crosby. He's a first-time novelist. It's American noir. And the protagonist is an incredible driving mechanic named Beauregard Montage. His nickname is Bug. And what's unique is he is a Black protagonist, and he's a bit complicated, where it's kind of been the domain of sort of the white anti-hero, like Walter White. Like Walter White gets to be evil, right? Like he gets to be, but everybody still kind of likes him. And Tony Soprano, he gets to be the bad guy, but everybody kind of empathizes with him to a certain respect. Like Bug Montage is an awesome character, and he's way more good than bad, but he's a little bit complicated. Like, and I really, and then I found the author, I just found out, and I've been following him on Twitter, S.A. Crosby. He seems like a really cool guy. His day job, because most authors still have to have day jobs, is at a funeral home.
Oh, that's morbid.
Yeah, so it's slightly, a little bit. So that's my yeah. So Blacktop Wasteland. It's a great book. I really enjoy. It's one of my favorite books that I've read this year. And I just watched The Boys, which is that Amazon Prime superhero show. Right. That show's wild. Like, I was not ready for that at all.
Season 2 is coming up.
I feel like I've seen it.
It's
about a very morally compromised group of superheroes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a superhero movie I hadn't seen.
Oh, it's great.
It's a
8-episode series.
Yeah, what, 8 or 9?
Yeah.
But it's
brutal.
Wild. Like it's I don't even know how to describe it.
I would say that it's the most realistic depiction of what actual superhero-dom would look like. Like, to think that Superman wouldn't abuse his powers, or like, it takes, if you've seen Captain America: Civil War, where they sort of squabble.
Yes,
that just looks like a childish argument compared to what the boys go through.
Well, I've been on
not the boys.
So I've clearly seen anything that was.
It's great.
Any superhero movie.
It's not for your kids to watch superhero movies.
No, it's not.
That's
unless you want them to make them
children.
the cool kids. I feel like teaching your children to curse is like the greatest gift you can give them.
Like, one of the points where I was like, oh, that really gets, like, I was like, this is not what I was expecting at all. No. They blow a dude up pretty early. Like, one of the superheroes, they figure out how to kill him, and it's horrific. Like, when I was like, when it happened, I was like, oh,
I thought he was the main character.
Yeah, like, what?
Oh, so it's kind of like Ozark, like, don't get attached to anybody.
You wouldn't get attached to them anyway.
No, yeah. You're gonna dislike everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everybody. Well,
the boys.
Couple.
Some of them are like sort of.
There's 2 characters you like.
Yeah, that you're designed to like. I kind of like all of the morally horrific people in them, and I would rather the morally.
Even Aquaman.
Aquaman's
the worst.
He's a terrible person, but I prefer
him.
Scenes with
Aquaman's the worst.
Morally upright characters.
It's Jason Momoa, okay?
This is a different Aquaman. He's a far more treacherous and less effective.
Okay.
All right, Jessamyn, what do you got?
Well, and now I feel like a dork because I was going to tell you about 2 books that I have recently read. And so I read The Gift of Fear. Have you guys read that?
I've not.
Oh my God, it's so good. So I'm halfway through my 3rd time through it. And it's written by a guy who is here. I actually have it right here underneath my Gatorade. Gavin DeBecker. And he is, and I'm super into true crime and stuff. And he helps like witnesses and victims like relive what they've gone through to like extract the truth from them. But he writes this book in kind of telling you how to trust, like he basically tells you, and I'm going to synopsize it as best as I can, how to, like, your brain knows things before your consciousness does. And so your gut instinct is actually because you're seeing and hearing things that your consciousness doesn't realize first. So when you get that gut thing, and he tells all these stories of crimes that he has helped uncover and solve and stuff through that. So I just thought it was really interesting, especially because, a single woman. It's actually like, he's like, no, listen, I'm not writing this for women, but this happens to women more often than anyone. But it's just really cool because like I thought about all these times where I've trusted my gut and then I was right, but then he'll interview people and be like, well, what did you see? And then they'll say what they saw. And then what did you hear? And then they'll say what they heard. And all of a sudden they'll realize, like, he'll be like, you knew that, you actually knew that, but your brain didn't get it to your consciousness in time, but that was your gut. Like, that was your gut. So I just thought that was really cool. And it's a cool way of training your brain. And then I just got this book in the mail, Salvage the Bones by Jessamyn Ward. Not my name. I'm not that much of a narcissist. It's Jessamyn. It's very different. Halfway through her memoir, The Men We Reaped. And I got both of those. So once I finish Men We Reaped, I really can't wait to read Salvage the Bones, because that one's a novel. The other one's more of the other one's more of a memoir. Anyway, I watch a lot of TV too, though. I'm not a nerd. I'm kind of lazy sometimes.
Oh, can I recommend a podcast too? It's quick.
Go.
Yeah.
It's called A Very Fatal Case of Murder, and it's a spoof. The Onion did it on a podcast investigation of a murder.
Thank God someone's finally spoofing those.
Oh, it's really well done. Like the main character was stabbed, shot, drowned, like all three at the same time, and he asked questions like, I was surprised to learn that the police force didn't have a podcaster on the case. No podcasters had been here to investigate this murder. That was my first red alarm.
Yeah.
And then he's talking to like the crying parents, and she's like, do you have a tissue? He's like, no, actually your sniffles are coming through really well. Let's just keep going. And then has her read an endorsement. It's awesome. It's really funny.
Is it audio or video?
It's audio.
That's right.
What is it called again? One more time.
A Very Fatal Case of Murder.
Very Fatal Case of Murder. Okay.
I can't take the true crime, because I don't know why, for a while at the end of any true crime podcast, like, oh, well, I'm gonna find out who the killer is. No, you never do. They never solve it.
You have to listen to Dateline.
Dateline, exactly. Dateline wraps it up by the end.
They do a podcast now.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know they were actually still producing new stuff. But if there's a resolution at the end, that's all I'm looking for. Not just hints at like, we're pretty sure it's this, but we'll never know.
This embodies the decline of small town America and what happened here. Yeah.
With minimalist banjo music playing.
And then at the end, they're like, if you know anything, please call.
All I know is what you just told me.
Why would I? This is your job.
I'm not a detective.
I mean, you're not subscribing to me as a listener.
Yeah.
Terry, what are you into?
Man, check this out. So I plugged into this show. I woke up at 3:00 in the morning. I couldn't go back to sleep. And I was like, I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to watch it. It's going to put me back to sleep. It's this show called, so on BET. Imagine that, me watching BET. I really don't watch BET that often. But it's called BET Chronicles, No Limit. So Danny understands this because he's a rap hip-hop aficionado, right? So there's a story of a guy by the name of Master P, who was, in my opinion, a notoriously horrible rapper when he came out. But he overcame some incredible obstacles, some turmoil that would destroy most men, and turned himself into one of the greatest entrepreneurs to ever, in American history, really. He turned a fledgling record label, took a chance on himself, and turned it into $500 million. And so you watch it's a documentary series, like 5-part series, shows him from the very beginning. You guys are sports guys, so you know Percy Miller, Master P, was actually a very good basketball player.
University of Houston.
Yeah, went to the University of Houston. He actually played in the NBA after he got rich and famous, though. But he was still very good. So that's what I watched last night. I thought I'd watch one episode and go to sleep. I haven't been back to sleep since 3:00 this morning. I haven't been back to sleep yet.
Do they explain how he did all the album art, which looked like it was like the world's, like it looked like people were cutting up Polaroids and gluing them together to make the album art?
So they didn't explain like the actual graphics part of it, but that's part of what it was all about. Like like when I say he was one of the most terrible rappers, for you guys that don't know Master P, he wasn't very good at all, right?
No.
But he was a genius at marketing. So not to give anything away, but he would, Danny, you know, when he would put out an album, he secured a record deal, a distribution deal for himself, where he was taking like 85% of the money, of all the retail money from the record label. And what he would do is he'd put out a CD and he'd put like the graphics from every album that he said is coming out that year. That he's every album would be a promotion for the next album, for the next album, for the next album. So he was just a master marketer, and he put out 23 albums in 1 year. In 1998, was like made $60 million in that year, and everything was gold or platinum and above. Coming from nothing, coming from literally the Calliope projects in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Marketing, man.
Nice.
Make you say, oh,
Nah.
Yeah, I know of him more as a mogul than I do actually an artist.
Yeah,
I know about his empire. I can't say I've ever actually. I would recognize this. I'm sure I've heard some of his music, but I don't think I'd recognize it.
guarantee you.
His kid played hoops too, didn't he? Did
Kid played
play
hoops at USC.
Yeah.
He played basketball at USC. He had his own TV show on like Disney Channel or Nickelodeon. His kid was a mega star and had multiple albums as well. Yeah. Marketing his kids. He was pimping his kids.
It's great.
A great untold American story. I had no idea that Master P.
Good.
Who knew?
Well, thank you guys, everybody, very much for joining us. I appreciate it. It was good to see all of you.
You
Nice to see
too.
you too.
Yeah.
All of you.
You can listen to. I never know how to say your co-host last
Danny
name.
and Gallant.
Gallant. 7 to 10, right? On 710.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessamyn
Very easy.
McIntyre. Of course, you're the
Very
exec.
marketable.
You essentially exec produce everything on that side of
The entire station.
pretty much the
Yep.
entire station. Yeah.
She's the lady.
Mhm.
She makes it happen.
And we'll be back next Monday right here, facebook.com/Burns and Holla. Also youtube.com Burns and Holla. Have a great week, everyone. And we'll talk to you next Monday at 6:00. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Peace out.
See ya.